Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Legion Talk, episode number 120. Now, what we're going to be taking a look at is another lovely article from the mainstream media, from USA Today. The Abolitionist History of Thanksgiving and Pumpkin Pie, and Why the South Resisted Both. I don't know. I can't take these people seriously anymore. From Matthew Korfage, USA Today Network. From Bergen, New Jersey. Sorry, Apple, pumpkin is the true home-baked American pie tradition. Or maybe sweet potato, but more on that later. Okay, well, I mean, if it was actually an article about that, but I have a feeling it's not. So, I'm just going to throw that out there. Every year, on the fourth Thursday of November, America embarks on... It's not just America. You know, there are Canadians that know about our Thanksgiving. And I know that from my job. Like, you know, so they come down here and, you know, they know what Thanksgiving is. Like, they were talking about it all day, just for the record. Embarks on a pumpkin pie feeding frenzy unknown anywhere else in the world. Literally what I just said disproves that. I mean, I'm not saying there's not a lot of truth in that statement, but it's like, to think that we're the only ones that know about that is really narrow-minded. And aren't we trying to be like diverse and stuff and like maybe think outside the box? USA Today. In the lead up to the Thanksgiving holiday, sales of pumpkin spike like a toddler's blood sugar. Okay. Even people who don't really like pumpkin pie often eat it anyway. Yet again, okay. I mean, if I don't like something, I'm not going to eat it. After all, it's tradition, as American as college sports and unused vacation days. Okay, I mean, you know. But it wasn't always so. The Thanksgiving pumpkin pie is now a symbol for sweet national unity. Well, we could use a whole lot of that right now. But our politicians decide, you know, and a lot of the mainstream media are discussing differently. But it was once a hotly contested battleground in America's original culture war. In the 1800s, the humble pumpkin became a totem of the fight to abolish slavery in America. There are these New England abolitionists writing saccharine sweet stories about pumpkin, said historian Cindy Ott, author of Pumpkin: The Curious History of an American Icon. They very consciously saw these pumpkin farms in contrast to the immoral plantation economy and plantation farms in the South. They very specifically and explicitly compare those two landscapes. Now look, I have absolutely no issue. I love history. I love learning, you know, little tidbits of history about this, which is great. You know, I think that's an awesome bit of knowledge. However, on Thanksgiving itself, it doesn't really apply, and that's the problem. So even though Thanksgiving is supposed to be a coming together of being thankful for everyone and everything we have, and this kind of an article kind of turns its nose up at it, and that's not a good thing, because people who are reading this are like, oh, Thanksgiving, you know, oh, it's reminding them that, oh, America was racist and they used a pumpkin to fight it. And it's like, okay. I mean, so far it's mild temperature. It hasn't gone to the extreme yet. We'll see if it gets there. In the mid-19th century, according to Ott, eating pumpkins was a matter of identity politics. And there it is. There it is. And much the same could be said of Thanksgiving itself. Boy, just way to bury the lead there, folks. Just way to just like slide it in there real smooth, you know. Just just the tip, just a little bit, and you see how it feels. You guys are losers. You're such losers. These people are losers. Nobody's inviting them over for Thanksgiving. You know why? Because you're gonna ruin it with this kind of crap. You're gonna be like, you realize that Thanksgiving is about identity politics, right? And it's like, all right, Steve, we didn't ask. Just shut up and eat your food. Watch a football game, fall asleep like everybody else does. Shut up. When Abraham Lincoln declared a day of Thanksgiving on the 4th day of November in 1863, it was the culmination of a long pro-Thanksgiving campaign by abolitionist, pumpkin lover, and home economics icon Sarah Joseph Hale. Lincoln framed it as a call to heal the wounds of the nation and restore it. See, that's a nice historical point. That's a nice historical point. This is not. That's an opinion. It's a bad opinion at that, too. Identity politics. And the Declaration became an annual tradition for American presidents. But some in the Confederacy decried the Thanksgiving Declaration as a rank political ploy. Worse, Thanksgiving was yet another example of self-regarding New Englanders telling them how to live. I mean, in a sense, yes. In a sense, yes. I hate to tell you guys this, but slavery has existed in every part of the world since the beginning of time. It exists in the world to this day, to this very second that I'm recording this video. There are slaves on this planet. Now, with that being said, Thanksgiving is something to be very thankful for. So what we have turned Thanksgiving into is something beautiful. This article it's still a little kind of lukewarm, but it's definitely heated up in a few places where it shouldn't be. This is an annual custom of that people heretofore celebrate with devout oblations to themselves of pumpkin pie and roast turkey. Read a fiery anti-Thanksgiving editorial in Richmond. Yeah, well, you know. I mean, at least he kind of, you know, called it out as fiery anti-Thanksgiving. So I give him credit for that. I'm not here to torch this guy. I'm here to call it the way I see it. For years after the Civil War, according to Ott, many Southern families refused Thanksgiving and especially pumpkin pie as cultural artifacts of the Yankees, the Union, who ultimately became, you know, supported the ideals of the United States. This is true even though pumpkins grow just fine in the South, and pumpkin pie or pudding recipes had long existed there, including in Mary Randolph's famous 1824 cookbook, The Virginia Housewife. See, this is where history is still kind of fun. You know, he's getting back to the history of it. I'm okay with that. He's only had like literally less than a handful of like stupid takes. So how did the New England anti-slavery movement get sole custody of the pumpkin? It's complicated. The abolition history of the pumpkin. Pumpkins were always a strange romance. I don't feel like I have a romance. No, I'm kidding. It's a cultural romance. The orange field pumpkin is impressively massive, but it is also dry, stringy, and a bit tasteless. Unlike other varieties of a domesticated squash, the field pumpkin never took hold in the everyday urban market of the 1800s. It was too ungainly, too cheap to be profitable. Contrary to legend, it didn't have any place of pride in the Pilgrim's 1621 feast. That's true. Which few associated with Thanksgiving until, well, I mean, the common squash did, but you know, a pumpkin is basically a squash, and it's until decades after the holiday had become a national tradition. In fact, no one from that feast recorded serving pumpkins at all. No, I guarantee they didn't. If it was served, it was just as kindly like a savory side dish. Ott said it was not in any way special part of the occasion. It was probably served the day before and the day after, too. The native pumpkin was a fast growing source of sustenance, a staple but not a beloved food for early colonists up and down the East Coast. But up and down yeah, it would have been the East Coast. I said it right. By the 19th century, increasingly picky eaters preferred more flavorful winter and summer squashes. The fast growing field pumpkin was often grown in manure bins or amid corn rows and used as feed or dairy cows to make milk taste richer. I mean, that's a bit of you know, it just makes it sound appetizing, but we know it's grown in manure. I mean, come on. In the rural South, it was the province of poor and little farms, said Ott, not really something you get sentimental about. But in the urban North, it became something city dwellers encountered only on solitary trips out to the country to appreciate nature. We gotta love nature. I really do, to be honest. For the New England literati, the pumpkin came to symbolize a noble and primitive way of life that urbanites had left behind. Even as farmers that were derided as rubes and pumpkin eaters. It's probably not wrong, dude. I mean, the way that people who live in cities look at people who live in the country like they're crazy. I'd prefer to live in the country, and I've lived in both. Nothing spoils your appreciation for the farm's natural beauty quite like encountering actual farmers, wrote Ralph Waldo Emerson. Pumpkins became nostalgic totems of abundance and the connection to the land. This is shaping up to be a better article than I thought. This coincided with a change in how New England celebrated the old religious traditions of Thanksgiving. Once marked by a day of fasting, the tradition morphed into a celebration of autumn prosperity with all God's rustic spoils laid out on the table. Amid cranberry and turkey, pumpkin pie reigned supreme. The thought of keeping Thanksgiving without a pumpkin pie is surely almost unstoppable. Yeah, wrote a correspondent for the American Farmer in 1833. This is a long article, but that's okay. It's fine. We're learning history here. Storytellers of the day filled the world with proto-Hallmark Channel fantasies of New England Thanksgiving that almost invariably ended with pumpkin pie, said Ott. Others wrote poetic odes to the honest pumpkin. Prominent among them was Thanksgiving activist Hale, as the editor of the wildly popular Godey's Lady's Book and the author of nursery rhyme Mary Had a Little Lamb. Hale was the Martha Stewart of her day. Well, hopefully she didn't go to prison for tax evasion. I think it was tax evasion, right? She also had a bit of a habit of writing letters to state governors on behalf of Thanksgiving. That's cool. Like many New England writers who loved pumpkin pie and Turkey Day, Hale was a deeply religious voice against slavery, as they should be. I mean, and we know that now. I mean, slavery is something, like I said, it's been very common to the world. The United States was the very first nation to, abolish slavery. Of course, we had some hiccups after that, unfortunately, in Congress. The newly elected officials from the southern states did not like that they had lost the war, so let's just say Congress reached a peaceful agreement, and they backed out on remodeling the South, and that's where we got Jim Crow. Mistakes made, mistakes learned from. So she depicted the North's idyllic little pumpkin-filled farm as morally superior to the vast slave plantations of the rural South. Well, yeah. I have no doubt that many of the slaveholders would rejoice to have the southern states entirely freed from slaves and cultivated in the same fashion as we Yankees do in the North, wrote Hale. No. No, there was a whole war about it. The northern farmer, just by existing, was a natural-born abolitionist, she argued. Pumpkin pie and Thanksgiving were celebrations of a better, more godly way of agriculture without the institution of slavery. This Hale's campaign for the state Thanksgiving had been arguably successful in the early 1800s, helping her spur declaration in 29 states by the 1850s. But as the fight over slavery intensified and the Civil War loomed, commentators in the South states began to reject any Northern cultural aggressions. The state of Virginia, in particular, wanted no part of it. In a letter to Hale, it's kind of ironic that the state of Virginia was very, very, very against and abolishing slavery, and now it's like heavily blue. Oh, and just for the record, um, yeah, it was the Republican Party who voted unanimously to abolish slavery. The Democratic Party did not. Actually, they were probably about 2/3 of them were against it, roughly. I know somebody told me on Twitter too. Well, that's not That's not Lincoln's Republican Party. Still kind of founded on the same principles. Yeah, still kind of founded on the same principles. In a letter to Hale, yeah, I might have made it a little more political than I should have. I mean, but these are honest historical political takes. So I guess we're learning about history in the same way that's nice, but at the same time we're learning some things that are not nice. In case you didn't know some of this stuff, I knew some of this stuff, but there's a good chance, a good many, much of this I did not know. In a letter to Hale, stridently pro-slavery Virginia Governor Henry Wise invade against New England's abolition aims, calling out this theatrical national claptrap of Thanksgiving, which aided other causes in setting thousands of pulpits to preaching Christian politics. So it's Christianity that helped end slavery. Now, isn't that interesting? And the far left Democrats of today have a big problem with Christianity, which is very much practiced by the black community. Think about that one. They didn't like Christianity then when they were against abolishing slavery, and they don't like Christianity now. In an 1856 editorial in the Richmond Whig likewise decreed the repugnant holiday, opining that it incurred nothing but northern idealness and drunkenness. Even for decades after the Civil War, Southern states remained leery of the Yankee holiday. As each president made his annual Thanksgiving proclamation, some Southern states moved their own Thanksgivings to a different day as a form of resistance. Texas refused to acknowledge the holiday altogether until the 1880s. It's only after Reconstruction that the Southern states, it wasn't full Reconstruction. There should have been more Reconstruction, but Congress caved. And that's why we got Jim Crow. Finally, we realize we finally got to get back in the fold and get with the program to show that we are, after all, American. Yes, we're all Americans. Every single one of us. Doesn't matter the skin color. See that? Skin color? Doesn't matter. We're all Americans. We're all Americans in this country, and we all stand together. We may have our differences, and we may not agree all the time, but you know what? Damn it, we're Americans. That the southern states start to embrace Thanksgiving, said historian James Cobb. Not until 1941 did the date of the Thanksgiving holiday become enshrined in federal law. That's a lot later than I would have thought. I would have thought that at least probably like the 1920s was probably, but no, okay. As for pumpkin pie, it remains a mostly Yankee food for years. Arguably, it didn't fully spread through the South until the 20th century and the advent of mass market pumpkin pie filling. I mean, I could probably see that. I don't know. Every Thanksgiving I've ever had for the last 36 years has always had pumpkin pie. It's one of my favorites. The only thing above pumpkin pie that I like more for my birthday is cheesecake. But I don't really like sweets or a whole lot of pies other than cheesecake and pumpkin pie. That's it. I mean, I've had apple pie. It's pretty good. If you put some hot apple pie with some ice cream, I can get down with that, but I'm not gonna run and scoop up a lot of pie other than those two pastry dishes. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I think it happens more in the 40s and 50s of the last century, said Frank Clark, foodways historian at the Colonial Williamsburg in Virginia. It's something that happens as we homogenize the cultures a little bit more with TV and fast food in supermarkets. You start to see some of these things moving around from place to place and become more common in places where they aren't necessarily prior to that. Before that, Clark said the paucity of pumpkin pie in the South may have been in part of matter of preference and of pre-existing traditions like sweet potato pie. I do like sweet potato pie. I gotta be honest. I forgot about that. That's my bad. Enslaved Americans who were cooks in much of the South had brought with them a love of African yam, which wasn't available in the New World. The sweet potato became a substitute. The orange flesh sweet potato are often still called yams today. Yes, they are. See, that's an American tradition. It's taking a very positive out of something that was very negative, and infusing that into American culture. So even though slavery is a part of American culture, what the slaves brought with them became American culture for what their ancestors that moved forward and for their immigrant counterparts coming in later. The majority of black Americans were not descended from slaves. You probably would have the neighborhood of maybe 3% tops. I think that was, if I'm remembering correctly, that's the last stat I think I saw was like 3% were descended from slaves. The rest were all immigrants. But no, that's a beautiful thing to bring. That's why America is called the melting pot of the world. We're the great American experiment. Was it perfect? No experiment's perfect. I mean, that's just scientific knowledge. America was an experiment, and it worked, and it's worked phenomenally. Now we've had some breakdowns recently, but guess what? Societies break down a little bit, but guess what? Eventually, they mend themselves back together. You know why? Because your neighbor next door, you don't hate them, and if you do, you're a bad person. Unless they did something not nice to you, then you really shouldn't hate. You can dislike them, but you shouldn't hate them. Unless maybe like killed your dog or something, that's like cause for, but that's also illegal. So anyway, long story short, we all live next to each other. And so even though I may get mad at a driver down the road who cuts me off and I honk at him and he flips me off, within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I'm not even going to think about that guy. It's like, he might have been having a bad day. Man, I was having a bad day. We went over both ways. It's not like we pulled over on the side of the road and decided we were going to, go to blows with each other. America is the United States of America is the best country you can live in on this planet to date, to this exact date, this exact time. A lot of these African things just merged into the Virginia diet, Clark said. See? Look. It's not cultural appropriation. It's human beings coming together in community. In the American way of life, shaping the United States into what it is to this day. Like I said, we're not perfect. We never will be. But this is the best damn thing we can do right now. And if you take a look at the first cookbook written and published in Virginia, The Virginia Housewife by Mary Randolph, there are at least 4 or 5 recipes of clearly African origins. See, that's awesome. And so rather than eat the pumpkin pie beloved by abolitionists, white Southerners instead cooked a sweet potato version made according to the preferences of formerly enslaved Africans. Do you see how that's a beautiful statement? They went from being slaves to the Southerners adopted their traditions. And now, like I said, they still had Jim Crow. We still had ways to go. But sometimes it takes baby steps to change things. You can't smash it with a sledgehammer and go, Grah! It doesn't work that way. It's baby steps. Human beings are resistant to change. So little steps. But you got to do it together. And you don't do it by screaming at your neighbors. It doesn't work that way. You do it through open dialogue and trying to communicate your points. And you're going to disagree. But ultimately, if you can sit down and disagree about things but still be civil at the end of the day, that's a pretty big win. But during the 20th century, New England's yen for pumpkins swelled into a truly national love affair. From the porch front jack o' lantern to the pumpkin spice latte. Pumpkin spice latte. Get that out of there, sir. That's the most egregious thing you've said in this whole entire article. It's not, but it's funny. And a throwback decorative gourds. Some small farms make more money with 8 weeks of pumpkin patch than during the whole rest of the year, Ott said. That is true. We do love our Halloween here. The sweet potato pie and Thanksgiving endures as a parallel to Southern Thanksgiving tradition, also in the homes of many African American families who migrated north. I've been in a lot of Thanksgiving settings in the West where they had mostly pumpkin pie, but since I've been to Thanksgivings down here, a lot of sweet potato pie, a lot of pumpkin pie, both which both are phenomenal. I tell you what, you get a sweet potato, you split that thing, some butter, some brown sugar. Whoa! Oh, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. I don't think many people in New England eat sweet potato pie for Thanksgiving, Ott said. But there's a lot of people in the South who do, and it's because of this cultural history. Cultural history. It's not because the South can't grow pumpkins. It is because of the cultural and political history of the South, which is true. Culture and politics are just downstream. You know what, Matthew? Where's Matthew? From USA Today, Matthew Corfage. USA Today. Wow, that was a longer video than I wanted it to be. But you know what? I think we learned something great. Excuse me. I'm getting hungry because I haven't technically eaten yet. That's what work will do to you. My day job and this. That was a nice article. He kept most of the identity politics out of it. There were a couple of identity politics statements. They were less than a handful. So, I mean, they're probably like maybe 2/3 of a handful. Maybe 3/5 of a handful. It was, I liked it. It was very rich in history, which is great. They had an actual historian, and it also shows that even though something very ugly can turn into something very phenomenal. You know why? Because the vast majority of Americans celebrate Thanksgiving. The vast majority. White, black, Hispanic, Asian. I mean, they come over here. They immigrate, they immigrate here and stuff like that. People immigrate here from other places, and they acknowledge our holiday, and they're like, hey, somebody invites them to Thanksgiving, and they might start their own tradition, or maybe they started Thanksgiving tradition of their own, with just a little bit different foods. Who knows? Thanksgiving is an ideal of sitting down together with people you care about and being thankful for everything you have. So be thankful. And thank you, Matthew Corfage, for writing an article that was very nice. When in previous years we have seen articles that were not nice about Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is an American holiday for all Americans. It has no color. I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day. I am thankful for all of you, and I'm thankful for the fact that we get to discuss this, and we have a country where we can all sit down together, and we can all sit there, hold hands, break bread. Cheers. I'll see you guys.